Hi, I'm Bill Donohue, President of the Catholic League. Welcome to Catholic League Review, where we discuss some of the work that we've been doing so that you have an opportunity to listen to what we're saying firsthand. With me today is Sean Leigh. Sean is a policy analyst here at the Catholic League. What I want to address today is fatherhood. Coming up, Father's Day. Why is it under attack, and who's driving this whole thing? In New York State, Kathy Hochul, the governor, and the legislature are now considering a bill which will basically erase fathers. What I mean by that is that the putative father, the deadbeat father, is now going to be called an alleged parent. And what about the actual father? Well, he's going to be called the non-gestational parent. Why the need for the neutral term? I mean, what's wrong with these politicians? It's really stunning that they have this kind of an animus against fatherhood.
Bill, where do you think this is coming from? Where do you think they get these ideas?
As usual, it comes from the academy, from higher education, and from radical activists, radical intellectuals. It's the way it works typically, not always, but typically the culture will inform the polity or the political order. And that's generally what happens here. And that's clearly what's happened. You take, for example, it's really been radical gays and radical feminists who have been driving this whole narrative of getting rid of motherhood and fatherhood. In the case of gays, they object. They say, listen, when you have conversations about fatherhood, what does that leave us? Well, they're saying we're excluded. They are excluded. They're not wrong about that. But their anger should not be directed at men or the people of the legislatures. It should be directed at nature. Nature has decided that two men and two women cannot reproduce. Now, they may want to be angry about that, but they can get angry at God. That was God's design. And that's a useless battle. You're not going to defeat him. In the case of the feminists, they object to patriarchy, all right? The idea of male rule. Well, I have news for them. It's universal. There's not one society in the history of the world which has ever had a situation where women rule. The closest you will come is when you had a society which has been devastated with war, and obviously women have to make some decisions at that point. Now, that doesn't make women inferior and men superior. It simply makes them different. Now, how do we know this? Well, if you take a look at the literature on this, they'll try to contradict it, and they'll point to Margaret Mead, the great anthropologist, and they'll say that she found societies where, in fact, women were ruling. Indeed, she never said that. I quote her in my piece. It's up on the Catholic League website. She said that in an interview back in the 1970s. She objected to those people who said, I found societies where there's a matriarchy. She said, I never said that. In all of history, men have ruled. And so she doesn't want to be misquoted about it. Now, why is it that men rule and women don't throughout history? Well, somebody had to take care of the baby and somebody had to protect the family. The men being stronger, they were out there, hunters, gatherers, warriors, and the women, of course, closest to the baby because they gave them birth. This has been true in all of history. It doesn't make men better or worse, and it doesn't mean that women can't be in positions of leadership. Margaret Thatcher and Jean Kirkpatrick, we no end to the number of women who've served very well as the head of state. The question here is that as a general rule, not as a general rule, but a universal rule, it's universal. There are no exceptions. The authority has been vested with the men, and Professor Stephen Goldberg, a sociologist of all people, out of New York, out of a city university in New York, he wrote a book about this a number of years ago called The Inevitability of Patriarchy. Why is it inevitable? The hormonal makes the social predictable. In other words, it comes down to basically one thing: testosterone. Men have much higher levels of testosterone than women. What does that have to do with rule? Testosterone is linked to aggression. And aggression is linked to dominance and to rule. That's the connecting there. In other words, a biological imperative here. Men are more predisposed because of higher levels of testosterone to have levels of aggression, to be in the positions of dominance. And that explains that. So it's a useless attack. People can beat up on men and it's usually white men and, Christians and heterosexuals. We got that. They can beat up on us all they want. But the fact of the matter is you can't beat nature, and you can't beat nature's God. Happy Father's Day.